Very good in you, Chris. And yeah, I think it was about 18 months ago. It was at the beginning of last year, if I remember correctly. But yeah, doing very well. It's interesting living in the country we do, and there's massive challenges. But I think what I've always known is South Africans are very resilient, and we know how to. Sometimes I believe too resilient because we're not holding our government in to account because of our resilience. And you just see it. But firstly, thanks for the opportunity, and it's lovely catching up. And yeah, I'm quite excited for tonight's conversation. And from the last one we had the last time, it was awesome. I really, really did enjoy it. I think that's a great idea. And from a, there's no legal requirements for carrying them also. So definitely when you are in the country, we must definitely get together and catch up. I can hear you loud and clear. So
Juarez. Okay, there we go. Can you guys hear me now? Can folks hear me now? I see it coming out now. Anybody got that? Okay, just sorry, Deon. I can't hear. Yeah, okay, I know you guys. Okay, they got it. Yeah, folks, it's Microsoft updating software, and this software every time reassigns my settings. I don't know why it did that, so sorry about that. It's a new microphone, so I'm not sure if that's what happened here. But let me change one more thing before we get back to Deon here. It goes to default. That is not what's supposed to happen here. So this is a new microphone, Deon, and let me just go ahead and turn this one off. So there we go. Oh my gosh. Okay. It's sorry, folks. Technical difficulties. Anyway, we were just saying you got to hear Deon though. You can hear him fine, and he was talking about. Hold on a second. Let me make sure I didn't mess you up for that. Hang on. I think I might have messed up Deon, so you can't hear Deon here now. No, they're not going to be able to default. Okay, now go ahead. Give us a count real quick. Good. Give us a count.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, I think we're good now.
Okay.
Wow. Welcome to Amateur Hour, folks. It's our first broadcast here out of Appalachia. We just got some of them there electricities, that stuff that they used to have in South Africa. They shipped it over here. We're loving it.
Yeah.
And next week, we be getting some shoes, too. That's what I hear, new shoes. Anyway, sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. That's a little bit embarrassing. So, all right, back to Rookie Hour. But, I suppose part of the problem, Deon, is that last time we talked, I thought I might be a wealthy man. But after Bidenflation, I'm eating out of trash cans in Caracas now. Oh, my goodness.
And sadly, it's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of investment analysts out there, or economic analysts out there, that do foresee a massive correction of some sort coming in the near future. Be that a massive recession or depression. Some are even saying to the magnitude of a Great Depression, which I think. We're living in the world we are now, where everything is literally with the form of communication we have is so close that it will affect the global economy also. But yeah, I think that's a conversation for another day. I think we've got more exciting things to talk about this evening.
Absolutely. And folks, just so you know, Deon is the Chief Executive Officer of DCX Bullion. I've got that correct, I believe. And this is not a paid presentation. It's an informational brief. And on this one here, what we're going to do is I'm going to let Deon raise the topics he wants to talk about, and then I'm going to interrogate him on it as he's a guy in the industry. But anyway, I am an investor, and I've been relatively successful over the years, at least before Biden eviscerated my portfolio. But we're going to talk about Russia today and South Africa. Two topics that are near and dear to the heart of a lot of people. And I'm not really sure if people who follow events really are up on what's happening. So let's go and get started, Deon. What do you want to start with?
Well, interesting enough, it was actually on the radio when I was driving home this afternoon that Putin will not be attending the BRICS summit, and that's now been made official. In fact, it was done a month ago, but ANC was holding back on that to release it until for whatever reason. So it is official that Putin will not be here. I actually did say that if he did put foot on South African soil, I could tell you without a doubt we would have sanctions thrown at us straight away. And from the US, and part of what we're going to chat about is that relationship. South Africa, through apartheid, we were isolated from the world, but we had certain countries that kind of stood by us indirectly, or we still traded with. That is definitely the UK and the US to a degree. And I think a lot of that came through because of that time and that period, which you'll know also was the whole communism thing and the race for Africa and the pushing of communism throughout Africa. And of course the Americans and that the anti was to make sure that they could eliminate as much of that communism spread into Africa. And I think they used South Africa as an alliance and a partner because of that. Come the new South Africa, Nelson Mandela was released in 1990, and then we go into elections in 94, and then the whole new South Africa comes. And I think there's been certain presidencies that have really worked. I think Thabo Mbeki's presidency was a very strong one. And then the Jacob Zuma years were horrendous. And I think just with state capture and everything that happened with that, it really just threw this country into complete shambles, which we're still backpedaling and trying to recover from now. Cyril came into being president, and I really, really believed that he was going to bring a difference, and he was going to make
sucker.
I know, but I'm telling you, and that was the original. When I first, when Cyril was coming in, I thought, you know what, he's a good businessman. There's an opportunity we can actually get back on track, and subsequently, it's just spiraled even further and further. And we've got into a thing with the load shedding and everything, from a municipal perspective is it's completely gone backwards. And we, to the point now, even with silly things like potholes in our roads, I mean, it is got so bad over the last couple of years. And I remember going to Zambia a couple of years ago when I was still involved in the mining sector. And I was up in a town near Kitwe, which is more, I think it's northern central Zambia, and it's a predominantly a mining town. And I remember seeing cars like a BMW M5 or big fancy cars, and the roads were horrendous, massive potholes, and really the general infrastructure was really, really poor. And I never ever believed that South Africa would get to that same point where we're looking at now. And I can tell you, just the silly thing with potholes is it's got so bad for this to actually be ever sorted out by our government. I can tell you now, it will, as they're repairing holes now, they'll be coming back to repair them. So it's not going to happen.
Well, there's a kind of rather large hole in the central business district of Johannesburg that might need to be repaired in the immediate future. yeah.
Well, an explosion, and again now, Igoli Gas, which is our gas supplier for a low pressure gas, they're saying it definitely was one of their pipelines. But of course, Johannesburg is a mining city.
Yeah, and the mines ran under. I mean, it's built right on the edge and right on top of mines, been dug since the 19th century. If people actually saw the substrata under what's holding up those buildings, they probably would sell their property and move into the Highveld outside there.
Yeah, and as I said, I come from a mining background. I've been fortunate enough to go down the deepest mine in the world, which was over 4.5 kilometers, right down to the bottom, right to into the developmental area where they were still actually expanding it. And I can tell you now, yes, Joburg is covered with mine shafts, and I think it's probably more mining related.
Yeah, probably. I would suspect it may be a natural methane buildup, and there's a cavity under those roads for maybe a tunnel or something. Or the only odd thing about that explosion, we're getting a little bit off topic, but this is of interest to the audience. The only thing about that explosion was odd to me is that I don't doubt Igoli Gas. I know about natural gas lines, and it's very unusual for something like this, for that pressure to build up. Their system is very well designed, even in places where the infrastructure is neglected. But the odd thing for me is they said, no, it's not us. We checked into it. I'll buy that, and we have no loss of pressure. But then they said, our lines run down the middle of the street. Well, the middle of the street is destroyed. So you didn't lose pressure from that section of the pipeline? I mean, that just, okay, hang on a second here. Send out a proper spokesperson, because this person doesn't get basic, physics. So anyway, I don't think it was them. I think it's probably a methane buildup, and they're blaming the Zamazamas for. No, I seriously doubt this. This was large enough to register on the Richter scale as a minor, a minor tremor. This was pretty crazy. But anyway, it just is it another symbol of collapsing infrastructure? Who knows? But it's probably mine related. I would agree. And old mining, a consequence of what happened years ago.
Yeah. So I think we've deviated off topic, but what I was really highlighting was that originally we had this relationship with the West, and when I say the West, specifically the US, and then the West Bloc being Europe, the UK, and so on. And of course, with the ANC coming into power, they had a lot of support through apartheid, during apartheid, when they were, an illegal, or they were considered terrorists.
They were banned,
yeah, they were banned. I mean, Mandela was in prison for 27 years, and so on. And the ANC received a lot of support through Russia. In fact, I know that a lot of ANC veterans went to Russia for education and so on. So we've always had a relationship with Russia. And as we've gone further down into a new democratic dispensation, that relationship has deepened. And then, of course, the whole bringing together of BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and of course South Africa. You've now got that bloc which is now challenging the West and the dominance of the dollar and global economics. Interesting enough, I mean, China is the biggest economy on the planet, and India is just about, I think they have or just about to push America off the number 2 spot, and they are coming in there. So the BRICS bloc is actually becoming more and more influential. And I think there was a definite move to start to negate the dollar's international influence on how the petrodollar controls things and so on. So I think what was quite interesting, and this relationship's been building up over the years and becoming more and more cemented. And then, of course, BRICS came into being, and that's been quite a key thing. Come last year in Simonstown, and I call it the Simonstown incident, where the US ambassador literally did a shot across the bow saying, "You guys are messing with us. Continue this, and we will then take it to the next step." And it's quite I know you come from that background, so I'd like to get your thoughts on
Sure.
this. It's actually quite unprecedented that you'd have an ambassador coming out in public to say that. And I think it was done very clinically to raise awareness within the public.
Yep, absolutely. And let me do a little housekeeping before I get to respond to that. First one, I see Brandy Wells is in the chat. What did Brandy say up here? She said something a minute ago. I think I've lost it now. She popped in, and then a moment ago she said that the explosion was a communist, plot. Right. No, she said racist. It was a racist explosion. That's what she said. But she said something a minute ago. Oh, there it is. There's Brandy Wells. Said Nelson Mandela was a communist takeover in blackface, all in the name of freedom. Yeah, there's some fair statements to that. But as far as now, Deon, I may have misheard you, but I think we probably disagree on a couple of things there, and we'll throw it out there, and then I'll come back and answer the Lady R thing. You said China's the largest economy in the world. China's economy is about $16 trillion GDP. Ours is almost $26 trillion. So they're not the largest in dollar terms or in per capita GDP yet. They've climbed a long way thanks to our idiocy in sponsoring their entry into the World Trade Organization. And as far as BRICS, a lot of people were talking about how important BRICS is, but I've been following it since Jim O'Neill described it as an acronym back in 2001 when he worked for Goldman Sachs. I read his comments when they came out back then because I follow economics even when I was in active duty. And if you strip out Russia, whose economy today is smaller than it was in 2001, if you strip out Brazil, who's grown, but not nearly at the pace that China has, theirs is just about a $4 trillion economy now. You take out South Africa, whose economy is stagnant at about $250 billion now, much smaller than Nigeria since it's been rebased. India is the world's largest democracy, and they have an economy, but it's a poorly governed democracy with chaos and service delivery that oftentimes rivals ineptitude of South Africa. So India is a promising place, but it really hasn't gone if you look at their growth. The only one that's grown is China. China's gone from a $2 trillion economy to a $16 trillion economy in the last 20 years, and that's impressive. If you strip everyone else out, it's China. So everyone keeps talking about BRICS, but in my view, if the Chinese Communist Party wants something, then that's what BRICS will do. If they don't, then BRICS won't do something. So it has the potential to be something, but right now, to me, it's, and this isn't one man's opinion. So, I mean, and I think it's just slightly different years. That's why I'm mentioning it. But to me, it's little more than the non-aligned movement in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, which India and Indonesia and a bunch of other countries got involved in and never got anywhere. As far as the new currency, we're going to talk about that. 85% of world trade is conducted in dollars. Despite the fact that the only other real global currency is the euro, it never really caught on to the degree the dollar has. That doesn't mean the dollar's here to stay. Our economy has been bastardized by quantitative easing and manipulative interest rates for decades and deficit spending. Anyway, I'm getting off the track. But back to Lady R. Let me answer Lady R. And if you want to rebut that, you can in a second. But the Lady R, here's the thing that wasn't talked about. Behind the scenes, the U.S. diplomatic team approached South Africa after the Lady R incident when they saw that, because they saw it in the press. They saw people on social media talking about it. They went to the South African government diplomatic and said, hey, what's going on here? We've sanctioned that ship. It's a defense contractor from Russia. They're in a war, and why are they docking at Simonstown? And they got nowhere. They went back and forth for a couple of months, and then finally a trade delegation went to the States, which of course included the National Security Advisor. Yes, economics is important in national security, but it's rare that you send your National Security Advisor to discuss trade with a friendly nation. Maybe with North Korea, but not with a friendly nation. And a number of other security officials went on that visit. They came back, nothing came out of that. They approached them again, nothing came. So Brigitte took the unusual step of a friendly nation, which the U.S. would be a friendly nation to South Africa, doing exactly what he did. And it was a shot across the bow. I agree with you 100%. This was, listen, we asked you, you didn't give us an answer, you're not discussing this, and we're not going to accept that. So here's our shot across the ball. Anyway, so I agree with you on that 100%. I don't know if you want to rebut or respond to what I said previously.
Yeah, no. I fully agree with you. And actually, what I was actually more highlighting is as far as trade with South Africa.
Oh yeah. No, China is definitely South Africa's biggest trade partner. They eclipsed us about 7 or 8 years ago, but we're the second largest trading partner with South Africa.
Correct. I think the US we do about, I think the US does 62 billion. Which is 35%. Yeah.
Oh, so you talking about rand? Are you talking about rand? Or,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No. It's
Rands are far worse than dollars. And
yeah, but it sounds it sounds better when you put it in rand. 62 billion.
It's. I will say this, and we are going to talk about it because it is part of the whole problem here, and why we as a business also see this as an opportunity, firstly, to empower people to know that, yes, Iran is going to be decimated, be it through sovereign default or be it through sanctions or be it through just on how the country's being run right now. I mean, those things are all highly likely to come in the near future. Maybe we don't get sanctions, but the likelihood is we probably will have a sovereign default in years to come, because of all the loans that we've taken on and the fact that our economy is shrinking at the same time. So, with all of that, I mean, we know that there's issues, and we know that the rand is pretty much affected to the dollar. I mean, just over the last 14 years, and what was interesting is we did a case study on my RA, which is with one of the top institutes or a retirement annuity with one of the top investment companies in South Africa. And interesting enough, 14 years ago, the rand to dollar was around 7 rand to the dollar. And it's now sitting at 18.70 right now. I mean, it went up to literally $20 to the 20 rand to the dollar. And what was interesting in that case study is on my monthly premiums, the value there, I think I'll just get the actual exact figures there. On my monthly premiums, they're about 170,000 rand. In dollars, that would be about $13,700. The current value of that RA in rand terms is about 201,000 rand, which is about $10,000. So it's actually lost value. If you reflect my RA in dollars, it actually is a negative 25% growth over the last 14 years.
Well, that's not a good investment.
No, but we all, these are what, when I started working, it's a standard, go and get a retirement annuity.
Yeah.
You need to look after your when you're old and your old age and build up your nest egg and so on. So, these are the things that we were sold. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting is we took that same thing, so those same premiums over the same 14 years, and we applied it to buying physical gold. Mm-hmm. So every single month you put, it was about 1,600 Rand a month, and you purchased physical gold on a monthly basis. Your current value right now would be nearly 30,000 Rand, wow, which is about $17,500.
So nearly double.
Yeah, exactly. And that's in 14 years. And that's with the Rand devaluing to the dollar. And of course, gold's natural growth rate going upward.
Now, Deon, look, I cannot dispute your figures. You are spot on 100%. But I can be a contrarian. I mean, I've been an investor for, I'm almost embarrassed to say, going on 40 years now. A very small investor back in that day. I didn't have much. Not that I'm a huge one now. Certainly not a Bill Gates. Or a Jeff Zuckerberg. Was that his name? Anyway, Zuckerberg. Anyway,
Mark Zuckerberg.
Oh, Mark Zuckerberg. Yeah, I'm confusing with Jeff Bezos. Yeah,
Jeff Bezos.
yeah, another sucker. Anyway, no, I've watched the price of precious metals, platinum, silver. Of course, for me, the cautionary tale for me was back in the 1980s when the Hunt brothers tried to corner the silver market. And I watched that, not understanding investing, not in the marketplace, but watching this unfold and watching the price of silver go from $2 or $3 an ounce to $26 to $30, and then they lost $1 billion on silver. And of course, it pushed up the cost of film because back then, before digital cameras, we relied on film, and it used silver nitrate. Anyway, so the lesson for me was like, wow, precious metals, it's a commodity. It goes up and down. But your 14-year run you're talking about here has been pretty consistent. Gold has gone up. And let me tease this out, and then you tell me if I'm onto something here or not, because I'd appreciate that, someone that knows the market. Is it perhaps one of the reasons why gold is increased in value because of the bastardization of currencies, the deficit spending, the borrowing, and the manipulation of interest rates, which has undermined the true value? I mean, before you answer, my electric bill is 220% larger this month than it was a year ago. I'm consuming 20% less electricity. My petrol at the pump is $3.69 when I was paying $1.82 the last day Trump was in office. The price of a case of Coca-Cola that I get from Mexico, because they make it with cane sugar, not high fructose corn syrup, was $17 14 months ago. Now it's $34. Is that why gold retains its value and why it's had such a long run?
So, the Gold Council, they released statistics probably about a year ago that gold has given a compound return for the last 50 years of 8% per annum. And if you look and you consider that the 80s and 90s were quite lateral years for gold, I always say, yes, it is a commodity. It's moving up and down. But it's been moving up and down, upward, if it makes sense.
Over time, the trajectory has been upwards. Yes. Yeah. Yeah,
and again, I always say to people, if you're wanting to 10x your money, all these new terms and so on, and you're wanting to make a quick buck, then physical bullion is not for you. But if you're wanting to save and create generational wealth over the long term, then physical bullion, gold, silver, and platinum, and all three have different reasons why I'd suggest them. They would be the vehicles that you'd consider.
Okay.
So, but again, the important thing there is gold is a hedge against uncertain times, instability, inflation, and so on.
Well, and we can see that. It's sorry, but it's also potentially a hedge against the coming Armageddon and barter trade. If societies collapse, you got to barter something.
And Chris, you say that. I mean, I talk to many people on a daily basis, and there are groups that I know even within South Africa that are prepping for some global economic collapse where we'll be literally bartering. And I mean, to the extent, and I will say this, that the demand for smaller denominations on silver and gold, I'm talking about a gram of gold, little medallions and so on. We've had to create those because of the demand.
Yeah, the market's there, so you're coming up with those. No, I could see that. So listen, this is a fascinating conversation, and obviously we could talk for hours on this. This is a bit different tack than the first time you were on the program. The last time people contacted me and asked me if you'd come on the program, I said, okay, what for? And we tried to say, it was a good conversation, but we're really talking about stuff that really fascinates me. That's economics and building personal wealth for people. Because one thing I learned as a young man is that rich people generally don't tell you how to make money. So I had to teach myself how to make money. I mean, other than, working, obviously you can make your money work for you. But I want to get to the questions, because you've got some incredible questions now. And I'm going to let you know, folks, I didn't write these questions. Deon did, because he said, hey, this is what we'd like to talk about. So I'm going to read this first question, which goes back to the Russia thing, and we'll go from there. Is that all right, Deon?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so it's a good question. So what is the severity that South Africa's alliance to Russia has in terms of discrediting South Africa's government and the consequential devaluation this will cause to the rand? We've sort of nipped around that question. What is the impact? I think you talked about U.S. might impose sanctions, the West, and also, of course, the rand could probably take a hit in value. But what's the answer to that question?
Well, yes. So, this fence sitting that we've done for all this time, where I hand out to our biggest trade partner being the US, and second biggest trade partner, and then I hand with BRICS and Russia that we're neutral. But by being neutral, we're showing that we're not neutral. And I mean, that was highlighted when we vetoed a vote. It was on, I can't remember which thing it was.
That was condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I think that's the one Correct. You're talking about. Well, South Africa and 34 other African states refused to condemn Russia's invasion.
Yes, yeah, and that's been a clear indication. As we've said, we're building up to the BRICS summit, which is going to be held here next month, and the anticipation was that Putin was going to come. The Russians said if he's arrested, that's declaration of war, and the Americans and the West or even the ICC are saying that there is an order for his arrest out there, and because he's committed, as far as they're concerned, acts of criminal war crimes, and that's the important thing. I mean, so. We look at that, and we also see now that with the AGOA, which is your African Growth Opportunity Act, which is an agreement we have with the US, that we get preferential rates, we get duty-free on certain products and so on. I mean, just on that alone, I think it's worth to South Africa, as I said, it's about 62 billion rand of our GDP, which is accounts for about 10% of it. Now, if we, and that's up for renewal now in 2025, if that is then pulled from us, we can actually expect to pay a lot more to export our goods out based on different duties and so on. But also we then lose those trade benefits. And that's a massive thing. The other thing, as I said to you, the second part would be if there would be sanctions that South Africa would receive, we'd see the rand completely tumble. And I've been saying this for a number of years, and this is where it's really heading toward now, is we know that the rand is going to go to 20, 30, 40, 50 rand to the dollar. And we know that that's coming. And that's based on on how we've been managed in the country from a government perspective, but also our foreign policy is not helping us. And this is where what's really been highlighted with this whole Russia and US thing. And it's very simple. I mean, Joe Biden can actually, sanction South Africa based on the fact that we support Russia. I mean, and that's he can give that executive order.
No, he absolutely can. Sorry, I was listening intently there. I wasn't ready for a pause. No, he absolutely can. No, but South Africans have to deal with a couple of different things. As an American, one of the nice things as an American is that we have seniority, not seniority. In other words, our currency is a global currency. Oil is traded exclusively in dollars around the world, although there's supposedly an effort to undermine that now. People buy and sell oil everywhere in dollars, including South Africans. So when the price of energy goes up, we're hit less than other people because South Africans have to convert their rands into dollars to buy that oil. And you have another whammy here in South Africa because of the lunacy of the ruling party and its failures. For a time there, you had no refineries operating in South Africa. How embarrassing for an industrial country like South Africa that had zero petroleum refineries in operation. Now the one in Cape Town, just north of Cape Town, is back in operation. I can tell you because it smells. I was there, but it's back in operation. So you have one refinery, but much of your distilled petroleum products like petrol, diesel, kerosene, paraffin is imported, which means someone has to refine it elsewhere. You pay for that part of the process. You work your way up the value chain. You pay more, which leads to inflationary pricing in South Africa as a consequence of the real cost of energy going up, and then the artificial cost because of your weak currency and your lack of infrastructure. It just gets worse and worse and worse. I mean, if you take the taxes out, which are outrageous in South Africa, and you take out those artificial pressures, the price of petrol will be less than half what it is right now in South Africa, even at the current oil price. You think I'm wrong?
No, absolutely. I mean, we had actually done that where we had broken down the cost of fuel, and more than half of the actual fuel price is taxed. And again, this is the problem we're living in a country as such, where you've got massive differences on as far as poverty and things like that. And this, so of course, government still needs to collect taxes. And they found that fuel is a lovely way to just increasing it. And at the end of the day, but the sad part of that is that it has a massive knock-on effect to the rest of our economy, being food inflation. I mean, from 2020 to now, the price of goods has shot up. Even on a monthly basis, we're seeing prices increase. So and I'm talking rand here, where 500 rand might have bought you 3-4 bags of groceries. You're lucky if you're going out with one bag of groceries.
Yeah, and we're not talking about Mercedes and apartments. We're talking about basic staples like maize and milk and bread. It is insane. It is.
Yeah. And I mean, and again, that's part of the problem that we face as South Africans is how do we navigate through all of this? We firstly, what happens at a governmental level, and I've always said for myself and for our company, we remain apolitical. So we don't hold a certain view, but we're also not going to comment on saying that that's right or that's wrong. We kind of just want to be exactly. But we want to be in a position where we can, more importantly, educate people, make people aware that if from this conversation we're having now, if I've affected 2 or 3 people or even one person to think differently about their wealth and their finances and how they are saving for their long term, and to look at physical bullion as a vehicle and as an option, and not even to buy through me. It's more that awareness for me that is so important.
Well, look, I take the same approach when it comes to investing, because people often ask me for investing advice. And I said, look, you have to make your own decisions. If you want to ask me about something that, you understand what price to earnings ratios, what does that mean? If you want to understand about debt ratios, you understand common stock, different classes, American depository receipts, I can tell you what all that is. But if you're asking me whether you should buy Google, Alphabet, or you should buy, Amazon, or you should buy IBM, that's your choice. I mean, that's your decision. I've as far as my personal investing, I have never had a broker. I have discount brokers who don't ask questions. They execute trades. That's their only job.
Yeah.
And they get a small fee for that. But I never rely on a broker because that's my choice. So that's, it's kind of like you. I think that we're all better off if people are responsible financially and take care of themselves, save and invest, because that makes more available to grow the pie for everybody. And I think that's an important position to be in. I don't know. It sounds like you would agree with that. Would you?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said to you, for me, I took out an RA believing that, that's a responsible thing to do. I've got children. I want to make sure that when I get to retirement age, which I'm getting closer and closer to, I want to be in a position that I can actually enjoy my latter years of my life and actually not have to worry about having to work because I choose to work.
Exactly.
But, and that's the problem is we confronted right now in this country. And unfortunately, because of government policy and foreign policy, the man in the street has no say on what happens. Yet the ramifications of it, we get hit very hard with it. And this is that whole thing with Russia. I mean, you'll see, and again, like I said, am I pro or anti the war? It's irrelevant for me, that position. For me, the most important thing is, what does it happen? What happens if Putin had come here? What would be the ramifications of that? And as I said to you, without a doubt, in my mind, I mean, we would have been given sanctions. The rand would have tumbled to the dollar, and that just affects the man in the street completely. You know, we see the Blue Brigades traveling through Johannesburg on a daily basis, and we know that a lot of these government ministers don't use government hospitals. Their children go to private schools, and so they are not affected as much as the average man in the street. How are they battling? How they literally are getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to travel massive distances, paying, you know, for taxis and things like that, and they're not getting any better. They in fact are getting poorer and poorer by the day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's, you know, and that's part of the problem. But it's not just South Africa. It's elites all over. You know, the comments here in the States, flyover country, dismissing 85% of the surface area of the country and 2/3 of the 3/4 of the population as flyover country. And people like Barack Obama, you know, how these people bitterly cling to their guns and God. You know, that's not going to fly in flyover country or in most, you know, insulting people. It's the same in South Africa. The blue light brigades, the blue light buffoons are really a danger to the public. I've been saying this for many years. We got the most recent situation where they beat up soldiers. They beat a guy unconscious for no reason whatsoever other than the fact that they're arrogant asshats. And that's exactly what it is. But that just goes across everywhere. Remember the early stage of lockdown? We caught ANC members of parliament having parties, people filming them, just like, you know, people were upset about Boris Johnson, but this was happening all over South Africa. And they just, you know, in the meantime, they're arresting a mother for nursing her fussing child in the sand because she stepped off a sidewalk at Sea Point in Cape Town. I mean, and they're all excited about it. It really is rules for thee, not for me. It really is an elites versus the rest of us. And in South Africa's case, not to get you into politics, but the politics plays a role here in how it affects economics and personal finance.
Absolutely.
It's South Africa is run by a group of people who rule for 500,000 people, not for the other 59.5 million people in South Africa. They don't care about you if you're white, you're black, you're brown. Race isn't the issue. That's a tool used by people, but it is not the issue. The issue is the elites, the cadres, and their connections and their patronage. And, you know, in some ways it's kind of ironic because the National Party also lived on a system of patronage, except they had patronage for a different group. And the other difference is they hired competent people. The current folks don't hire competent people, as we can see. But anyway, so back to this. This inflation, as we've kind of talked about here, is really having a devastating effect on South Africans. Their money goes nowhere. You're buffeted by rising prices from abroad, the lack of production at home, importing things you never imported before, you used to make domestically. It's just the list goes on and on. Now, let me ask this question, and we'll get back to, we probably talk more about this Russia in a bit, and we're going to talk about this BRICS currency idea. But when it comes to, and this is a practical question here, when it comes to bullion, how do people get involved in that? Because some of the viewers are like, what about Krugerrands? But I think you have to register Krugerrands, and but don't answer yet. But so what about Krugerrands? You know, and then we've got Maple Leafs, we got the USA Eagle. I don't necessarily recommend you buy that one, but anyway. But these are national gold coins. But beyond that, you know, here in the States, we have companies that you can buy bullion directly and they store it. It's insured. It's there. If you want it, you can order it. It'll be shipped to you. You can actually get it. You want to dig a hole in your backyard and bury it or whatever you want to put it in a safe. But a lot of companies hold that. Is it a similar situation in South Africa? Do people like with your company, can they buy bullion and you store it? And is there a fee for that? Or is that part of the service? Or how does that all work? Because, I mean, I don't want, 80 ounces of, 24 karat gold sitting in a chest dug in my backyard. I have a hard enough time cutting my lawn, let alone digging up my gold. Anyway, so how does that work, Deon? Why
I'm smiling is I've got a client.
He digs a hole in his backyard. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have to go off. We have to go off air because I'm interested in this address. I'll be coming to South Africa. So
no, but anyway, so yes, there's been a massive growth because of the uncertainty, because of currency devaluation, and as I said, current financial investment products like RAs are becoming redundant, but people still need to be putting away money. And we've seen a massive growth in the sector. There are a number, as you mentioned, sovereign coins. So the Krugerrand is the South African sovereign coin, the Britannia is the British, and the Eagle is the American, and so on. And they're throughout the world. Now, of course, the sovereign coin is relevant to the country that it's manufactured in, or that it's made for. So, for instance, the Kruger Rand in South Africa is legal tender. So it falls in that it's the same as your money in your wallet, and it has certain laws and regulations that pertain to that. So as a South African, you cannot leave South Africa with more than 10 Kruger Rands. You need a SARS clearance to take 10 out, because it is government property.
But Deon, what if I take it out flying in an airstrip from Palo Palo? Is it okay then?
I can tell you now, I've had clients where they've taken, the client declared to me, I took out 40 Kruger Rands. And I was like, that's if you get caught, they will be confiscated. So what we always say is, you know what, you can do those things if you prepare, if you want to take those risks, but we don't advise it. So we looked at bullion and we said, and it's a common thing, even in the States, and I follow a lot of the American companies that are involved in bullion also, and a lot of them are American. So I understand your market quite well. And there's been massive growth globally for the demand of physical bullion, because people, as we said, globally, things are not well. And this is the right time for this kind of commodity to really start to support and make sure that people's wealth is maintained, in fact, grows. So we utilize medallions, which is basically, it's the same. It's classified as jewelry or collector coins. So your sovereign coins, like the Eagles and the Britannias in South Africa, are collector coins. So you can buy those coins in this country, and even though the sovereign coins, they be declared collector coins and fall into that same class of coin as a medallion. Now, the advantage of a medallion is you can take a little gram medallion, which is small, or you can take a kilogram, which is a 32-ounce medallion. Put it in a box, and a 32-ounce medallion is a kilogram, right? That's 1.3 million rands worth of gold. Put it in a box, and you could fly out of ORT legally, and you're not breaking one law.
No, I have one piece of advice, Deon. If you do that, don't put it in your check luggage if you're leaving from OR Tambo.
No.
Make sure you carry it.
You carry it on you, But what I'm really trying to highlight here is there's no laws pertaining to that. And there's, like I said, Kruger Rands are the Kruger Rand is the original, rock star of all the sovereign coins. It was the first and was the one that actually started the whole sovereign coin thing.
Yeah, no, it's even made its way into Hollywood. Diplomatic immunity from Lethal Weapon. All this Kruger Rands. Yeah. No, it's so I'm not a South African, so a Kruger Rand for me is a collectible as long as I take it out of South Africa. Right? So you when you come over, you're more than welcome to buy Kruger Rands. You can buy medallions, and you wouldn't pay the tax on those anyway. And of course, Kruger Rands are zero VAT rated anyway. But that also, as I said, we do offer vaulting. We've aligned ourselves with Fidelity Security Group. They are the biggest security group on the continent and in the Southern Hemisphere. And we've got an exclusive arrangement with them where we actually do vaulting. I'm looking at a national rollout where we're going to utilize some of their hubs. That is on the cards. That will probably come in the next couple of months or so. But we currently do utilize one of their vaults in Johannesburg, and it's an old SA Mint vault. So this is one of the few facilities in Johannesburg that's actually nuclear proof. And I can tell you now, it's not located on Bree Street by any chance.
No. And I can tell you this without a doubt, that any criminal, and this is from the facilities manager, any criminal that chooses to break in there, they will not get out. They'll go one way, but they won't be. The level of security is just through the roof, and it's an impressive facility. So we utilize them. We also utilize a local courier company. Well, they're actually international. Also, is Skynet, and they do all of our insured deliveries to clients, and we deliver nationally. We do it all the time, and it's fully insured to your door. So we utilize those services. We've also got other partners with regards to tax consulting South Africa, which are tax consultants. So anything to do with CGT, immigration, and so on, we can get opinions on that.
Interesting. No, I asked that question because I think a lot of people don't understand. I mean, I think one of the reasons people don't invest in bullion is it seems exotic or prohibitively expensive, but you can buy little bits. It's you don't have to buy ounces and ounces. I mean, unless I start seeing a lot of super chats, I won't be buying any Krugerrands on my trip to South Africa. I'll just tell you that now.
but Chris, you say that, and you're looking at an ounce of gold right now is about $1,900 an ounce in rand terms. We're looking at about 33,000 rand. Mm-hmm. It's not everyone has that kind of money. Nope. So we've also developed programs where you can actually buy grams on a monthly basis, and it's on a recurring payment system. It's on my website. People can go there. It's called the MMC Monthly Medallion Club, and it's a lovely product. It gives you different pay points. You can choose your own also. But the lovely thing with that is you're accruing grams of gold, silver, or platinum on a monthly basis. And the lovely part of that, and how we actually came up with that, I'll just call her Barbara from Langebaan. She's a woman in her mid to late 60s, and she's in retirement, and she has only X amount of monthly disposable income. But every single month, without fail, she'd phone me and say, Deon, I'd like to buy an ounce of silver for this month. And then the next month, her daughter was getting married. Let me buy 2. Then she heard bad news on the saying economics and all this. She then got worried she'd buy another 2 or so. And over a period of 2-3 years, she accrued a massive amount of silver. And what's interesting is suddenly that little 600 Rand a month became significant in volume. And that, again, is how we developed the MMC. And it's a lovely story. And the lovely part of that also is where gold was priced, or silver was priced then to where it's priced now, it's actually maintained and it's grown through that period of time.
Well, that monthly medallion thing's pretty interesting. That means anybody can get in on this if they'd like to do it. Now, I watched these precious metals over the years, and we talked about earlier the Hunt brothers and the artificial rise in the price of silver at one time because of its industrial use. But gold also has industrial uses, not just for jewelry. It has uses in semiconductors, electronics, and mobile phones, things like that. And then platinum, of course, is well known for its role as a catalyst for catalytic converters to control pollution in cars, among other things. So they each have industrial uses that can drive or lower demand, but there's also other aspects of it. So, I mean, I don't know that there's, and you can answer this, that's why I'm putting it out there. I don't know that there's a better precious metal, so to speak. The circumstances for each are different, but traditionally, in the past, not talking about the last 5 or 10 years, but historically for me, I'd always noticed that silver was the least expensive of these commodities. Yep. Gold came next, and then platinum traditionally was higher, but I think that's kind of inverse now. I think actually gold may be higher than platinum at the moment.
Yeah. So, Chris, exactly. And I mean, you did a nice around, sum up of the precious metals. Yes, the gold is primarily an investment bullion. So throughout the world, central banks and high net worth individuals actually buy physical gold to hold and use it as a hedge against inflation and so on. And we know that. I mean, government, all central banks globally have been buying gold over the last 3-4 years at unprecedented levels. And again, pay attention to who's doing what. And I say, when you see investment companies starting to move a lot of their exposure out of the markets and into physical bullion or into bullion, you know that they're concerned about what's happening. But just on gold, silver, platinum. So you're right. So gold's the top one. It's around $1,900 an ounce. Silver comes in around $900 an ounce, and then platinum comes out. Platinum comes at $900 an ounce, and then silver comes out at about $24, $25.
Oh, okay, I was going to say, damn, I missed that surge. Last time I looked, it's about 18 or 20 bucks an ounce. Man, I'm going to have to get a financial advisor.
So the lovely thing is, and like people always, and I get asked this on a daily basis, what would I invest in? And I personally invest in all 3 of them. Just to sum it up quickly, and we can get back into the whole Russia thing, is gold, as I said, is a hedge against inflation and all those kind of things. It's a hedge against devaluation of currencies. As a South African, I could not emphasize it more. Get your wealth out of rands or rand-based investments. Simple. Get your and start to accrue your wealth in things such as physical bullion. Gold's a staple there. We've seen the growth. As I said, the last 50 years, it's given compound growth of around 8% in dollars. In rands, it's probably 4 or 5 times that amount. We look at silver. Silver, as you mentioned, is an industrial metal. Its biggest market right now is your photovoltaic market, your solar panels. I mean, that's growing at about a 19-20% growth rate per annum. The biggest consumers of solar panels right now is India, and they are one of, if not the biggest population on the planet. We see massive moves also with the EVs, your electrical vehicles, where, of course, with all the electronics, silver, second to oil, is the most used commodity on earth. It has the highest heat and electrical conductivity bar any metal. So it has massive industrial applications. So we see with the whole move away from your fossil fuels and into electronics and battery-powered vehicles and things, we will start to see more consumption of silver. Where it's priced, it is exceptionally cheap. It's a great entry-level bullion product. And I mean, we're talking, and a lot of guys are saying that we could see silver go into three figures, up to $100 an ounce.
Wow.
And and again, that's on its growth and the demand for it. And again, like gold, these are there's a scarcity to them. They're limited in the amount that we can have. There's a lot of recycling happening where they are recycling a lot of the bullion, and they can start to almost harvest some of that silver back. But even in this country, I mean, because of the cost is so cheap, silver is a secondary product to a lot of the mining that happens in this country. So in platinum, gold, and so on, silver is a byproduct to that. You got a lot of, in America and South America is probably some of the biggest silver deposits. So we can see silver is definitely going to move. And we see its growth has been steady over the last 2-3 years. And it's now sitting comfortably in the mid $20 an ounce range. We do see, and as you mentioned, the difference between silver and gold is simple. As you mentioned, the Hunt brothers in the early 80s, where they did that squeeze and they forced the price of silver up. Silver is a very small market in comparison to gold. Gold is traded on a daily basis in the trillions. And I always say, like, same thing with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a smaller market in relation to gold. And silver and Bitcoin probably have a similar profile, because if you have a massive interest, and this happened with the Reddit Wall Street Bets groups, I think it was February last year, where they all started to purchase silver overnight, and literally the price shot over $30 an ounce, and then there was a retrace and a pullback. But what was exciting for me about that is suddenly a whole group of youngsters were now exposed to silver that never were. Mm-hmm. And silver to me is an exciting thing. Platinum, as I said, again, it's an industrial metal, but interesting enough, its investment demand has grown over 187% over the last 2 years. So there's a definite move in platinum. Where it's priced at now, literally, as you said, it used to be more expensive than gold. It was over $2,000 an ounce. It's retraced to around, as I said, it's sitting around 900 right now. But interesting enough, and when we first looked at platinum, and I wasn't bought on actually looking at it as an investment product for my clients, because, as I said, I came from a mining background. I saw platinum peak. I was involved in the platinum sector, and I saw it completely crash overnight. And I thought, nah, as far as your auto-catalytic converters, we're moving away from fossil fuels. Why would we be, platinum is used for that. Again, palladium was what was brought into the auto-cats. And now, interesting, Russia is the biggest supplier of palladium in the world. They got 2 problems: war and then permafrost. And the permafrost is melting in the areas where it's actually mined. And anyone that understands mining is if you got water and shafts are flooding, you can't blast and you can't mine. Yeah. So there's been a definite switch from the autocats into platinum over the last 2-3 years. And then, of course, the whole thing with war. So the Russia, the price of palladium has actually been falling. And interesting, the second where platinum is really going to grow is in the hydrogen economy. Now, to put it simply, as you would have a battery in an electric car, you'll have a hydrogen fuel cell in an electric car. And what it simply does is platinum is a catalyst that converts hydrogen into electricity. and is the most efficient metal or substance that they currently using to do this. I mean, Japan declared themselves to be the first hydrogen economy, and that is across the board, from planes, trains, ships, you name it. They are going into a hydrogen economy. In fact, I think hydrogen, once they can kind of get it right, will surpass a battery technology as far as your EVs and all of those kind of things.
Folks, you're listening to the Indaba Conversation with Chris. My guest today is Deon Rebello, the Chief Executive Officer of DCX Bullion in South Africa. And we're talking about Russia, BRICS, precious metals investing. And I have a question from one of my viewers related to services that your company provides. Mr. Punisher said, please ask Deon what the amount of grams difference between the 4 packages on the monthly club option. I haven't looked at your website recently, so you'll have to fill me in.
So again, what we do is on a monthly basis, we do a price lock on the first working week, Monday of the month. And then we do that price lock. We then apply it across to all our clients that have the recurring payments. So like, for instance, I'll just use it. The entry-level packages is $375 for silver, $450 for platinum, and $500 for gold. That is based on the current price. So we do a price lock on that day, and then the grams are then determined. So for me to say $375 will give you X amount of grams.
It's not germane because it will change.
Yeah. And that's the lovely thing by buying grams and not a percentage of something, is you buying the physical and you have the physical. We hold it on your behalf. We are the custodians on the client's behalf, but we never ever own it. The client always has full ownership of those grams.
Well, one of the most successful investors that I've ever heard of is all in favor of buying things in grams. His name is Hunter Biden. Buying things in grams. Sorry about that. I couldn't resist. That was coming up at some point here. Listen, let's go and shift back to the Russia and the BRICS thing and this concept of another currency, if you want to get into that now. A lot of people come on and they're always complaining, it's fiat currency. Well, it is. It's all only backed by the good faith and confidence in governments around the world. We're off the gold standard. We need to go back in the gold standard. BRICS is going to gold standard. There isn't enough gold in the world to back the vast amount of currency that's out there, or am I wrong? I mean, the United States has more currency abroad physically than is in the United States circulating at any given day. Yeah. People hold our money everywhere. You go to the Congo and there's a currency trader, there are wads of cash. It's not rands, it's not rupees, it's not Chinese yuan.
Chris, you say that, and when I was in Zimbabwe, it was March of 2020. Yeah. I was up there for business in Harare. And I as you were driving through the streets, you see these guys in the corners, and I thought, gee, they got are these drug dealers?
Nah, they're currency traders.
They're selling dollars.
Yeah, they are.
Yes, and they're selling dollars. And I mean, but anyway, yes. So even a guy like Mike Maloney, who is part of goldsilver.com, he's an American, it's an American company, and they were talking about this whole thing about what's the likelihood of a BRICS currency being backed by gold. And he said it's virtually impossible because of the price of gold would have to rise significantly to be utilized as a backing of a currency. And the fact is, it's also I can't see it coming into being because of those things.
Oh, it's same here. There's just not enough gold. I mean, the amount of gold. I've saw this figure before. There's something like, if all the gold in the world that's ever been mined, including that lost by Spanish galleons at the bottom of the Caribbean or the Atlantic, was all brought up and put in one place, it would only fill up an X number of swimming pools or football fields. It's if you look at it, you'd be like, that's all the gold in the world. It sure seems like there's a lot more, but I mean that's a true story. Gold is a really scarce commodity, and until my joint venture with Elon Musk and SpaceX to mine asteroids comes into fruition in 2030. By the way, you can buy shares in that at iscamu.com. Go there and but until we start mining asteroids, we're kind of limited at what we have, what's on the earth and in the ground, aren't we? And what we can recycle that's been used.
Absolutely. But that's a benefit, but it's also a setback for physical bullion. Is what holds its price, or what allows it to grow, is like currencies. And you mentioned the dollar. I mean, in 2020, 21% of all the dollars ever produced were done in that year.
I know.
In 2020.
I know. It's what I call the bastardization of my currency. It's one of the reasons why my dollar doesn't buy
Exactly.
stuff anymore. Because the more you have of something, the less precious it is.
Yes, and it loses value. So we see, from where the dollar's inception from 1913 to now, what $100 would have bought you then to what it will buy you now, it's chalk and cheese. And you consider with gold over the same period of time, it's only grown in value. And that again is the difference, is because it's limited in its value, in its volume and what's available. It has that scarcity, and that is important because that will maintain the value of it going forward.
So I think one problem, it may be why South Africans think, people think of South Africa, they think of synonymously of gold. That's one thing they think of, South Africa gold. But people aren't keeping up with events. South Africa is an also ran when it comes to gold production these days. The mines are 4 kilometers deep. They're incredibly expensive and dangerous, and they're having difficulty having profitability for many of those gold mines. The largest gold producer in the world on an annual basis for the past several years has been China. And the United States and Australia and Canada are in those top ranks as well. But South Africa is lucky to come in 10th place in recent years, sometimes 7th. Yeah, was 6th. Yeah, there you go. But it's been as low as 10th in the past decade.
Yeah.
But people think of South Africa and think of gold. And it still produces gold, but it's not the major producer it once was. And so I think maybe that's part of the mindset. People are like, oh, we got gold here. Instead, don't even think about it. But it is a precious metal, and it is declining, particularly in South Africa, in availability.
Yeah, again, and I mentioned it earlier that I've been down the deepest mine in the world, just west of Johannesburg.
Is that inside Cyril's head, the deepest mine in the world?
I don't know, but when you mentioned dollars and the availability of dollars, I did think of Pala. So yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing is, with our mining, because it is mostly deep level mining, the cost to actually pull the gold out, and we got tons of reserves left. I mean, I know from the mines that I dealt with specifically that they've got big ore bodies that are sitting there waiting to be mined.
But the challenge is the cost. Yeah. It's like Canada in the oil sands in Alberta. There's tons of oil. There's more oil there probably than Saudi Arabia, honestly, if you look at the volume. But the challenge is that the way you have to mine it, the cost of it has to be over $70 a barrel to make any money off of it. So when oil's over $70 a barrel, they're digging the oil sands up. And by the way, I think it's a nice cleanup project. It's just a bunch of sludge laying out there in the prairie. But the people call it environmental destruction, actually improving the environment. But over $70 a barrel, then it's profitable. It's the same thing with the deep mining in South Africa. With gold over a certain price and the demand there, it is profitable. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and again, I mean, we if you consider that we were the top producer in the 70s, 80s, and we have declined down to, like you said, as low as 10, and we're sitting around 6 now. But we still have that heritage that comes through, but it has declined. I mean, fortunately, South Africa, having the biggest platinum deposits, has been able to, where gold started to decline as far as production, platinum took over. And again, that's been a blessing for South Africa, and very much. I mean, as I said, platinum. Keep an eye out on the pricing. I can tell you now, last year it was the top performer in physical bullion, hands down. In its growth from a price perspective.
Well, platinum has definitely been a blessing for the Bafokeng people in Northwest Province.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely been a nice source of revenue for those folks.
But again, you say that, and what's interesting is I did an actual presentation to one of the labor unions in funny enough up in Bafokeng, and I had an ounce of platinum with me, and I gave it to the one guy, and he held it in his hand. He said, I've worked and I've mined these mines for more than 20 years, and I've never ever held a piece of platinum in my hand. And I said to him, well, this is the problem, and this is that mindset that we as a business are trying to break, where people believe that bullion is for the rich and the wealthy and people that have got money. We say no, it is for everybody, and we're making sure that it is available for everybody. And I mean, I blew them away with that whole concept of the MMC, and we now developing a whole business to business model on the MMC, but specifically for that kind of thing.
That's excellent. Let's talk briefly about this alternative currency. The International Monetary Fund claims that the Chinese renminbi or yuan has both names is convertible. That's nonsense. No one takes that currency. They claim that it's convertible. They list it as a convertible currency. It's not. The reality is this: when it comes to currencies, you go back to 1990, we had multiple currencies that carried weight on the global stage: the dollar, the German mark, the British pound, the Swiss franc, and the Japanese yen were all important currencies. They all had a share of the global market. You look to today, 85% of global trade is done in dollars. Most of the rest is done in euros. Not exclusive. There's a few other things, but most of the trade is done in that fashion. So we're down to really just two currencies that the world's looking at here. But what happens with... I got a little bit off my track there because I got this Argentine peso in my head. I want to get back to this story, but So what happens now with an alternate currency? I think it's a fantasy, and we've sort of alluded to that people are going to create an alternative BRICS currency that's based on the gold standard. That's just not going to happen. There is enough gold for it, and where are you going to keep it anyway? You're going to put it in Shanghai? Is that where you're going to trust it in Shanghai? I wouldn't, or Moscow. I wouldn't trust it there. So there is supposedly this move, and I'll be covering the BRICS summit. I'll be in Santon for this next month without Vladimir Putin, so I won't be able to have lunch with him apparently. But it's a shame. We'll do it via Zoom while I'm sitting in.
I'll take you for lunch. How about that?
Oh, there you go. But so they're supposedly going to talk about discussing and introducing this, but the Russian central bank said, well, hold on, we're not ready for this. It isn't. So this move to create an alternative to the dollar. What is there to that? Is there something to it? Do you think it's long-term viable? Is it something in the near term?
Yeah. Chris, for me, and you've raised it, the dollar is used internationally, and there is the international currency that's been used. And this is where BRICS is coming into it. And as you said, they're not the first ones to try break the dollar's dominance. But I do believe the fact that the economies that are involved there are growing economies, and they're big, strong economies. China and the Indian, I get what you said about the Indian economy, but it still has magnitude. It still has weight.
It has absolutely unbelievable, incredible potential too. They're now the largest country in the world,
absolutely,
and it is a democratic capital society. It's just that from a service perspective and governance, it's very disjointed. If they can sort that out, they'll be a powerhouse.
Yeah, and again, so I do believe that there's a big drive, and I know that from BRICS perspective, they are driving this. How do we bring in a BRICS currency? And again, it's as I said, the big talk is, will it be gold backed? And my argument is they can try, but realistically, we see the price of gold, and anyone holding gold would love that anyway. The price of gold would shoot up into probably over $5,000 an ounce overnight. So I don't see that being realistic from that perspective.
Well, I can't disagree with you on that one, Deon. That's definitely where I'm at. Look, and then people go, "Oh, you're just an American, just being." No, I'm an intelligence analyst, and I'm looking at things rationally. Am I grateful that we have seigniorage because of our currency? Damn skippy I am, because at least takes some of the pressure off of me when it comes to my personal wealth and or income being eviscerated by global trends. There's a buffer there. So let's shift a little bit here. You sent me some notes about an example of how things can go south, the Argentine peso. So we're going to look in our crystal ball here. Okay, I'm Senior von Rensburg here. I'm looking forward now. Our senior from Chris von Rensburg. I'm looking forward, and South Africa does let Putin come. He comes to the BRICS summit. Joe Biden pops a casket, or blows a cap, something like that, or burst an aneurysm. And he does put an executive order out there to sanctioning South Africa for its collusion with the Russians. Now, I don't agree with that decision, but let's say that happens. The rand overnight drops to 30 to the dollar, guaranteed. There's no way it doesn't drop to 30 to the dollar overnight. And South Africa will see its status in AGOA suspended, which will cost it will cost your wine producers, your citrus producers, your automobile manufacturers millions, tens, hundreds of millions of dollars, and will lead to almost immediate job losses because no other marketplace is going to pick that up. Now, that's not a threat. Exactly. That's just a statement of harsh economic reality. If that would happen, does that sound like a plausible outcome?
Absolutely. So again, if South Africa had to have sanctions, and then the whole AGOA is well, it's up for renewal now in 2025.
Right, which is unrelated to the South Africa issue. That's a piece of legislation that's renewed over so many years, and 2025 is when it's up for renewal. Yep.
And what's interesting is we're not playing ourselves to get this renewed. If anything, this would force the Americans to say, can we find these products or these commodities from other countries? And we're not the only countries that produce. I mean, I know we produce unbelievable wine, and a lot of our agriculture, as far as our vegetables and fruits, are amazing. But again, we're not the only country that does it. There are other countries that could be other supply options for the US. And yes, overnight we would see, and you raise the important part there, is there would also be massive job losses due to that change of losing that AGOA agreement. And yes, you could expect the rand to tumble. Now, realistically, the other side of this is not just the whole BRICS thing or the Russian, is South Africa's financial position right now. We know we are grey listed recently, and we know that that's another step further down the chain to moving towards a sovereign default.
For borrowing, it's junk bond status for South Africa as well.
Exactly. Exactly. So from an investment perspective, we're not going to look to get any credible investments because of our rating. Now, the biggest problem here is a lot of the loans, and I always take this back to just look at your own finances. When your expenses exceed your income, and you then take out more credit to pay for your expenses, you're just creating a deeper hole. Now, South Africa is on that journey, and we've come to the point, and when they talk about sovereign default, and we're going to talk about Argentina about that, is once a country is unable to service the interest on the loans that they've secured, they then default. That's known as the sovereign default. Now, as I said, we look at case studies, and why we do this is people need to understand. I mean, we just need to look north of our border to see hyperinflation at its highest. And I mean, I'm sure the last time, I don't have them with me now, but I'm sure I showed you my Zim dollars. I've got a 5 billion Zim dollar, which I don't even think can buy your local bread.
I've got a trillion Zim dollar. I got you beat.
I think I've got a few trillions also. But so we know that hyperinflation is realistic, and it's happened in modern times. But we look at a country like Argentina, very similar in its look and makeup, as far as culture, and that they're quite similar. I mean, the fact we're playing them rugby, and I know you love your rugby in 2 weeks' time.
Yep.
We know that but what was interesting is in January of 2020.
Well, before you go there, I'm sorry, I got to interrupt you. But you're going to tell us about a recent event, 2020, and a cautionary tale of mismanagement of currency and all these other things, and what the consequences are. But I'm going to jump back to 1982 timeframe and tell people that what Deon's going to tell you is exactly what happened in Argentina in the early 1980s after the Malvinas Falklands Island War. And this has happened. It's like the third or fourth time, 3 times in the 20th century. Now it's happening again in this century. So that sets the stage for what you're about to tell people. This, folks, is a cautionary tale and could be South Africa's future, right? Here you go.
Well, yes. So if we look at January of 2020, the Argentinian peso to the dollar was 59 pesos to the dollar. They had a sovereign default in June of 2020, and subsequently, their peso right now, today, was 268 pesos to the dollar. So in the space of what, 2.5 years? No, 3 years. The peso has completely been decimated. So we say to you, we hear this, like you hear about the rand going to 19 rand to the dollar. What does it actually really mean? So we wanted to qualify it. So we said, if you had 1 million pesos in an Argentinian bank in January of 2020, and if you then took 1 million pesos and you bought gold in January of 2020, you would have been able to buy just over 11 ounces of gold. Right now in Argentina, with the peso dropping literally to where it's gone now, to 260 pesos to the dollar, nearly 270 pesos to the dollar, 1 million pesos will not even buy you 2 ounces of gold. So we look at massive devaluation. Now, what's interesting is that their million pesos in buying power is basically being eroded by a fifth. It's now going to nearly a sixth. So roughly, its actual buying power is about 200,000 pesos. But what's interesting is that 11 ounces that you bought in January 2020 with a million pesos is now worth 4.5 million pesos. So not just balancing, it's actually grown significantly over this period of time.
Well, that's something that certainly should get people's attention. And the other piece of this too is that you talk about the 54 to 268 pesos to the dollar, but the dollar itself today doesn't buy what it bought 3 years ago. We've been hailed with, as I mentioned, inflation here. So even that comparison, when you take it and you compare it to what you can get in dollars today, then what you can get for those dollars, that's even more oppressive. That's pretty scary. I mean, that means basically people can buy almost nothing for what they had just a few short years ago in Argentina.
Well, what's interesting also is in South Africa, I was just looking for, I've got the dollars. I just wanted to see here.
While you look for that, Friend Corp is asked earlier, and he's asking again about examples of the rules-based international order. What do you mean specifically by that, Friend Corp? People use that term all the time. When you talk about that, I think of the international maritime law. I think of international organizations, international agreements, the IMF, the World Bank. Is that what you're talking about? Just if you could clarify, Friend Corp, so we can address it. Go ahead. Sorry, Deon.
Yeah. So same thing. And this is just our currency devaluation since 2020. So I'm just looking literally over the last 3 years. If you had bought a million rands worth of gold in January of 2020, right now it'd be worth what, 1.6 million rand.
Wow, that's 60%.
So just
wow. Oh, well, nearly double,
just over the short period of time.
Yeah.
So this is why I say to people, don't see this as, oh, I don't have the money for this. How can you not avoid something like this when this is happening right now? And if you don't start taking action and making those things, like making that effort to say, you know what, on a monthly basis, I will purchase 1 Kruger Rand, or there's smaller denominations. You can purchase a 10th of an ounce Kruger Rand, or a medallion or whatever, but make. Yeah,
no, they're real small.
Yeah, I'll show you when you come here. I'll actually show you a gram medallion, and it's literally small like that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's minute, and the thing is, it's so, because gold is very malleable. I mean, it's for a gram, you literally could bend it.
Yeah,
because it's so soft, yeah.
And it's also high gold content. There's very little other or pure.
Well, yeah. So just on that, I mean, we only, on our medallions, we only use 24 karat gold, which is 49. So it's
virtually all gold.
9.95 gold, yeah.
Which is
Same
very soft. When I was in Saudi Arabia after the Gulf War, of course, the Arab merchants are selling gold all the time, and you get good bargains on it. I bought gold, but they love 24 karat gold. And those necklaces are so fragile. If they're done in ropes and braids, that you just put it around your neck, and you're not careful, you can squeeze it and bend it, because it's almost pure gold. Yeah, so soft.
Yeah. So we only, and again, we utilize Rand Refinery. So all the precious metals we purchase are 100%. We can literally guarantee everything that we produce is what it is. Because of the supply network that we utilize.
Now, I think it was Debbie was asking, say that again, Deon. I think what she's talking about, so I'll say it and tell me what I get wrong. In 2020, if you had $1 million Rand invested in gold today, so it'd be 1.6 million Rand.
What I can actually do is I actually have got if you can allow me to share.
Okay, let me see how we do that. It's been a while. Share screen. Oh, no, that's
I just want to.
Oh, how do I do that? Okay, so let me see. Participants.
Yeah. If you allow me to share, I will
allow to record local files.
Just go under my profile. If you go to my profile, and then you click on my name, it will then give you an option there that will say make a co-host.
Yeah, well, it says make host. Okay, it doesn't say co-host, it says host, but I'll make you a host. So you'll have to switch it back to me.
Okay. Cool.
It didn't give me the co-host option.
Okay, so I just want to see here. Okay.
Behave Baracus. Bad attitude Baracus. Mr. T. A pity the fool. A pity the fool. Wow, that was a time. That was for sure. All right, here we go.
Okay, so I just want to get this out and then get that out.
We're seeing the desktop.
Yeah.
There we go.
Can you?
Yeah, just go to the slide. There you go. There you go. Well, that's a presenter view. Just switch over. That's fine, but it's easier if you just go full screen instead of presenter view.
Oh, okay.
Just exit that, and then at the bottom, you're in PowerPoint. No, just exit.
Okay, but let me. Okay. I just want to.
Okay, I would say because it doesn't do full screen, and people are on mobile, so it's hard for them to see that. So if you can get out of the presenter mode, you just go to the top display settings, the top left-hand side. Okay. And then, or at the bottom of PowerPoint, on the bottom right-hand side, there could be a little screen projector thing. You just push that, and it puts it up full screen.
Oh, okay. So let me try that again.
Yeah, try that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Now people can see a little bit better. Okay, cool. Let me just make sure that that's what's out on the broadcast. No, they're not seeing that in the broadcast. For some reason, they're just seeing my blank screen. That didn't work. Just go back to what you had then. They're not seeing that on the show. They're just seeing my Cape Town night sunset. So that's weird.
Okay. So let me try that one more time.
Okay. Now I'm not seeing Zoom at all.
Oh, you're not seeing anything?
No, there's no Zoom on the screen. Here, I was going to say, you can send it to me. I can, but if you switch it back to me as the host and then just send that to me real quick, I'll bring it up on this side. Okay, I'm the host. Okay.
So I've made you host. What I'll do, okay, let me just go through those numbers and figures again. So in January of 2020, the Argentinian peso was 59 pesos to the dollar. Right?
Right.
And if you'd gone and purchased 1 million pesos worth of gold in January of 2020, you would have bought 11 ounces, just over. It's 11.3 ounces of gold. Currently, the peso has slid off a cliff and is around 268 pesos to the dollar. So we're talking June 2020, they did a sovereign default, and from that point, the peso has just fell. I mean, even from March this year to now, the peso was around, I think, 230 pesos in March, and it's completely been eroded.
It's still, going down as we speak. It probably went down today to 270.
Exactly. And this is what I say to people is now, if you go with 1 million pesos to buy gold, you'll buy 2 ounces of gold. But what's interesting is those 11 ounces in January of 2020, which cost 1 million pesos, would be worth now 4.5 million pesos.
Ooh. Yeah.
Oh. That's a different scenario. And that's numbers. I mean, we haven't manipulated anything. That's the natural growth of gold over this period of time. Like I said, what's crazy in South Africa, the same thing, and we haven't had any massive movement on from 2020 to now. But if you'd bought 1 million rands worth of gold in January of 2020, you'd be sitting on 1.6 million rands worth of gold right now.
Yeah, that's
and we haven't had a sovereign default.
Yeah, and we haven't had. And your currency has only really gone from about 15 to 18 in that time frame.
It's been sitting in that margin, but we know it's now hitting 20, and we know once it breaks that 20. The barrier, we know that it's going to slide. I mean, even old Darby Roulette, who's one of our economists that's always on the radio and I mean, he was trying to talk up the rand.
Yeah, no, and there's a good reason for that, because for currency traders, 20 rand to the dollar is a psychological barrier that people don't want to pass.
Exactly. And even he said the biggest problem that is against the rand right now is government's policies. Are one of the biggest determinations of our rand actually continuing to fall. As I said, just over the last 14 years, with that RA that I spoke about, my retirement annuity, that it was at 7 rand to the dollar. It's now at 18 rand 70 to the dollar.
Yeah. No, when I lived in Botswana, we're talking, it was like 5 or 6 rand to the dollar at the time, and it was 4.5 a pula to the dollar. Now I think the pula is like 11. It might be higher now, but it was like 11 or 12 or something like that. It's the space between the pula and the rand has gotten wider too. I mean, the pula overtook the rand 15 or 20 years ago, and now the gap is even spreading with the pula. Even though Masisi is a disaster in Botswana, that's my view, not the view.
But same thing with the Zambian kwacha. I mean, same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also.
But you know what?
So again,
sorry, with the kwacha, you've been up there. This is kind of it's a digression, but interesting story. Fascinating. When the farms were attacked in Zimbabwe, a few hundred commercial farmers moved back to what had been northern Rhodesia, Zambia, and they were welcomed there by the government. They came back, they leased and bought farmland, and they were so productive within 2 or 3 years, the kwacha appreciated in value because the price of copper went up and because their exports were up, and so they had a positive turn of events. And the currency appreciated in value so much that it became a detriment for people because of debt payments. But anyway, it's an aside, but you're probably familiar with that story.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you know, this is part of the problem that we face as a country right now is even on and I know I'm digressing now, but I saw a map of Africa and all the current projects done for electricity throughout Africa and how many of the countries are actually upgrading or introducing new electricity projects. And then they showed South Africa, and there was very little in comparison, and hence we're sitting with load shedding, which is another just a nice polite term for blackouts.
Well, it's another polite term for corruption and incompetence, malfeasance. Yeah, I know. I think one of the viewers was it Debbie just said, "Really, the pull is worth more than the rand." Yeah, going back quite a ways in history. I mean, it's been worth more than the rand since at least 2007, my recollection. So it's been quite a while. Now, the pula was a very well-managed currency, very strong, good macroeconomic policies. A lot of stuff that's missed, you know, Kama, of course, is not the president anymore, but when the financial crisis hit in 2008 and went into 2009, Botswana could have been devastated. I mean, they were getting 2/3 of the government's revenue came from diamonds alone. And, you know, 2/3 of the economy came from mining in general, from, you know, other mining, from nickel and diamonds and coal. But they took very pragmatic steps. They stopped capital projects instead of building things because they didn't have the money for it. They postponed it. They reined in salary hikes and didn't make salary hikes. They made prudent decisions. And then they borrowed money because they had sterling credit. They had fantastic credit. And so they had foreign currency reserves of like, I think, 3 or 4 billion US dollars sitting in the bank. Instead of burning through the reserves, they borrowed money on their good credit at good terms and paid it back at low interest rates when the economy grew more than that. That's good macroeconomic policy, something that Washington and Pretoria are alien to, good macroeconomic policy.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so what do we do? We need a hedge against these people who are destroying our wealth and our income. And it sounds like you and your company believe that precious metals is one way to do it. I tell you, the monthly medallion club, that sounds pretty interesting to me. I mean, that's, you know, a little piece of this, a little piece of that. What do you get like a statement? Do you have an online account? It says, you know, you've got one thousandth of an ounce. Now you have 2,000ths of an ounce.
So you get a monthly statement. It shows you how many grams you're accruing to your next ounce. Once it becomes an ounce, we actually mint a medallion. And then it gets either held with Fidelity, which is free vaulting with insurance to the value of R1 million, or we can have it delivered to you via Skynet, our other partner. So, you know, and again, that is the value of that you're just accruing those grams on a monthly basis. Again, as I said to you, you know, for me, it's a product that really opens bullion up to anybody, you know, purchasing it. I mean, for instance, we got clients that purchase that, like he's got a gold package 1, his wife's got a gold package 2, but he's got 3 silver packages for his children. You know, so you can do that. We currently actually doing a full system development now, where we're redeveloping a full site where it will all be automated. You can go online, you'll have your dashboard, and you'll be able to see exactly in live time what's happening with your bullion, where all those kind of things. So I'm actually busy with that right now as we speak.
Okay, well, I mean that's helpful for people to understand. I think Debbie earlier said something when she came with him. Debbie came to the States and people asked her to bring rubies and diamonds. I don't know who those people were. I would have asked for you to bring Bornmeises if you're coming to the States. I'd be more interested in that than rubies. What can I do with rubies?
Absolutely.
No, but seriously. So Deon, the BRICS Summit is coming. It's at Santon, 22nd to 24th of August, not July. I started to say July of August, just around the corner. And I've got my request for media credentials in. If they're granted, then I'll be there. If not, I'll be outside in the street, with a microphone, heckling them, in Santon. But I will be there, and Putin won't be there. So again, that lunch is out. So maybe I'll have lunch with you or somebody else, but it won't be with Putin. So going forward, I mean, you've touched on some of the things. South Africa is gray listed for financial transactions by the Paris Club. It is, as I mentioned, has junk bond status and has had it for some time. If it wasn't for the $4.3 billion that the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the African Development Bank, and the BRICS Bank all gave to South Africa in 2020, it probably would have imploded. There was no money. They've taken everything out of the fiscus. And you were talking earlier about the Zuma years, but frankly, the degree of corruption only seems to have increased under Ramaphosa. PPE theft, endless cases of money pilfering here, disappearing all over the place. It's just that it seems like the media doesn't have quite the obsession they had with it when Zuma was there. But I don't think the level of pilfering has gone down. So you take all of that, you take the pervasive violent crime, you take the crumbling infrastructure, the railroads are stripped, the highways are falling apart, we got explosions in the central district of Johannesburg, and then you've got an uneven labor force, so productivity is uneven. You get world-class workers of all ethnicities, and you get useless slugs that can't do things. You have functionally illiterate people who are graduates of university because of the low standards. All of this paints a very, very grim picture for foreign direct investment in South Africa. Another reason I think that maybe a hedge against inflation and currency devaluation is a smart move.
Chris, I couldn't have actually summed that up as you did. I mean, that was on point 100%. And that is the thing is, and that's what, for me, what spurred me on into this business in the first place was I saw my dad, spending years building his company. In the 80s, he lost it. He had to rebuild it and so on. And he's got to the point now that he's in his 70s and he spent his whole life saving. And just overnight, with the rand completely falling, losing its value to the dollar, all his wealth could literally be eroded overnight like that. And for me, that kind of was the impetus, or almost the reason why I actually started what I was doing. And for me, that is the clear thing. And as I said, for me, the important thing here is in this meeting or this discussion is if it's opened someone's mind to understanding that there is possibilities. As you read the whole story about South Africa, it's not great. I mean, what we take for normal life right now is not normal anywhere else in the world. And yet, this is where, like I said, we are highly resilient people, South Africans. And like I said, when we started this, we're too resilient. Because, you don't have traffic cops monitoring traffic lights. So then suddenly you got insurance, a private sector now investing into insurance guys. Now because it's even worse, we got hobos directing traffic. And police are driving straight through those intersections and they're carrying on. And again, that's part of the problem. We got potholes. So again, instead of government fixing it, private initiatives. We're not holding our government to account. And as I also said earlier, the biggest problem right now is we've gone past the point where I believe a lot of these things can be fixed. And it is concerning. I've got children, I've got family, and all these things. And how do I protect them the best way? And to be honest, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And that's why I'm even talking to you right now, is because I believe so much in it.
No, that's awesome. That you are sharing that, because I think people need to be aware of things. it's not normal. And let me just relate a story. But before I do that, I've got to mention the program announcement. Obviously, my Pennsylvania audience, those people who cling to their God and guns, is here because Keith Safford said, "The hell with gold. Buy ammo. Are you going to barter with slices of a gold bar? Stock up on 22, 9mm, 357. Anyway, all right, we got it, Keith. Keith is just down the road from me. A house I don't drive by for fear of being shot at. No, I'm just kidding. But let me relate a story when it comes to how South Africans become inured to violence. And this story goes back to the year 2000, Deon. I was in Paris on a flight that was delayed. We were sitting in the airport with some Americans who'd never been to South Africa. And I, of course, have been to South Africa. And we're sitting there, and there were, I don't know, probably about 8 or 9 South Africans. You know, people went to get some food, but we couldn't. It was closed. It's Charles de Gaulle Airport. It's one of the crappiest airports on the planet. Anyway, we're sitting there, nothing to do, and we're waiting. We don't know when our flight's going to be. And while we're sitting there, one of the Americans, because they'd asked me a question. I saw my short hair, obviously no beard. And I said, no, I'm in the Army. And they asked what I was doing. I said, no, I'm traveling in Africa for the Army, becoming more familiar with the continent. And they said, well, what's it like? And I said, well, you know, it's okay. I mean, you know, it's I wouldn't dissuade you from going to South Africa. You just have to be, it's like anything. As a tourist, you have to be aware of what's going on around you, you know. Just can't flash cash, you know, don't be ostentatious, so on and so forth. And be aware of your surroundings. And then South Africa, and I said, but there is very violent crime. And then all the South Africans, there was white and a few color and a couple blacks. No. That's just the media, man. Listen, South Africa is a safe place. You'll love it there. It's fantastic. You should come to Gauteng. You should come to the Western Cape. You should come to Mpumalanga. And I'm like, I don't disagree with you all, except that it's not an entirely safe place. And then they start talking and like, no, you know, I suppose, you know, like when they try to rape me, I got stabbed here in the shoulder. This woman pulls her shirt back and shows a stab wound. And then this other guy says, you know, when my sister was carjacked in Joburg, and this other person, you know, oh, that scar in my leg is, I got shot when my farm was. Every one of them been a victim of a violent crime. It's unbelievable. And the point of the whole story was that they become inured to it. And that's where South Africans are now. People don't bat an eye because hobos are out there or people out there making a few rand an hour for outshorts. And of course, outshorts is doing it from their own personal reasons because they don't want to pay insurance claims because people are having unnecessary accidents because the robots aren't working. And these workarounds, people putting their own electricity in. So the electric slide minister, Kokopa, is there. Hey, you know, we're up to 60%. Yay, passing grade. Listen, dude, the reason you're at 60% is because the demand's actually higher, but probably about 3 gigawatts of power is being provided by people themselves. So they're not draining the grid. If it wasn't for your failures, you'd be failing it. So it's people have become inured to the problem. And that's, I think, is the point I was trying to make. You made that point. And it's really sad. So it shouldn't be that way. So take care of your personal situation. Take care of your personal wealth, your personal finance, and make sure that you look to the future. You may get hit by a bus tomorrow, but if you don't, you live to be 90 and you're eating cat food, you got nobody to blame but yourself for not paying attention to the future. Just my thoughts on it, Deon.
Yeah, you know, Chris, 100%. And again, the important thing there is we know the situation. And as you say, I mean, South Africans, and you know this, we're exceptionally patriotic. We love our country. And when we speak to foreigners, we will always say, oh, we've got amazing, and there are amazing places in this country. That's why I'm still here. I mean, because I do love this country. And I've always been an optimist that things will get better. But there are concerns. I mean, what happened in July 2 years ago now, was it? No, it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, July 2021, the ANC's internal insurrection, mostly in KZN, but also in Soweto. Yep. And throughout, you know, and Johannesburg, my father's company is based near Wynberg, which is basically on the other side of the freeway from Sandton. And then you got Alexander behind that. And I mean, it was scary to think that can happen in this country at this time in our lives. So yeah, we do have these issues and we do have a lot of problems. But again, this is what I keep saying, is you have got also options and choices that you don't need to just bury your head in the ground. Take you know, information is power. Use the power to make sure that when the rand does, and it will, I can guarantee you the rand will continue to depreciate to the dollar. We will never see the rand back at 15-1. We'll never see it back at 10-1. The reality is it may drop a little bit now, but the tolerances, those levels where it drops to now is probably 17, 16 max.
but then it will go to 20. And as you say, that 20 rand to the dollar is the real tipping point. And like you see with the peso, I believe that once it goes over that 20 rand to the dollar, we'll see it jump to 25 very quickly and so on. And that's where people's wealth literally will be eroded overnight.
And not to be doom and gloom, and I want to turn away from more hopeful thought in a second, but what hasn't even been broached in our conversation is what the Greeks and the Italians did repeatedly for decades: devaluation of your currency. You want to talk about being hit. Imagine if the rand goes to 80 or 90 to the dollar, and the solution by the central bank is to devalue it by a factor of 10. Like happened in Zimbabwe, and and what's happened in Italy, it happened in Argentina, it's happened in Greece. That is devastating. And when I was in Europe in the 80s, the lira was devalued, and overnight you went from 1,800 lira to the dollar to 2,900 lira the next day. Man, it was vacation time for me. I only made a couple $100 a month, but I could go to Italy and live like a king because I could do everything. It was so we haven't even talked about devaluation. That's pretty scary. But let me shift and say, folks, the doom and gloom, let's take it away. Let's pretend that South Africa is the land of milk and honey. It's a wonderful place, because it is, and none of the violence, the workforce is great, the infrastructure is fixed, life is moving along. It's still prudent to have a diversified financial portfolio for your future and for a rainy day. And I think a fair argument to make, and I suspect Deon will make that because he's in this industry, is that precious metals might be a useful part of your portfolio. So even not just to get a hedge against, corruption or incompetence or currency devaluation, it's a hedge for your future and for planning to give you resource down the road. And as we've seen over time, these things tend to accrue over a long period of time. Deon, is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. And like I said earlier, this is not just a South African trend. I mean, there's globally precious metals, the demand for them has grown significantly. And you see, as you got all your sovereign coins, and the demand for precious metals from the layperson to protect wealth against inflation. I mean, even in the States, I mean, you as you mentioned, fuel has literally doubled in the last 3 years. So you talk about food inflation. You look in the UK, you look all over the world. These are issues that we're all dealing with. We're going into a high interest rate cycle globally. And I was talking to one of the investment analysts that I deal with, that we get a lot of our information from. And he's in his late 60s, early 70s. And he said the biggest problem with a lot of the analysts that are currently around is they've lived in a 40-year cycle of low interest rates. They don't know what it's like to live in a world of high interest rates.
Yeah.
And now that's where we're going.
Now, we've had a very artificial period where we got very comfortable in America with inflation running at less than 2% annually for the last 2 decades. And that's one of the reasons why this is such a shock. And if you've got money placed in investments that are hedged against inflation, like bullion, that's probably a smart move. Deon, it's been fantastic. I don't want to cut you off, but I've had you for a long time here, and I want to give you a chance to. We've run the gamut. We've talked about BRICS, alternative currencies, about precious metals, about investing, and inflation, the peso. I think it's been a very far-ranging conversation. But I want to give you a chance to get any last thoughts in, and then once you're done, I'll just ask you to hang on the line. Just go on mute, and then I'll wrap up in a minute. I just want to chat with you real quick afterwards, if that's okay. So the floor is yours. Perfect. Anything you want to say? I mean, if you want to tell people that the sky is gray or green, it's lovely. That the future is wonderful. The end is nigh. Invest in pork bellies or maybe bullion. Whatever you want to share with people. Just your thoughts to wrap up. The floor is yours, sir.
Well, Chris, firstly, thanks for your time, and thanks for everyone listening. I mean, as I've said, and I said a number of times, for me, this is about creating awareness. And if I've changed one person's, it's almost a shift in how you see things. And if that has been changed tonight, that there's one person that's thinking differently, then this conversation has been worthwhile. And this is about, we are living in uncertain times globally. We've spoken about South Africa as a country and all the things we're dealing with. And I mean, we could carry on talking for the next 5 hours on that it's just so big. But at the end of the day, and that's what I always go back to, it is information equals power. Use what you know and use it to benefit you. And that's where, make informed decisions. look at ways where you can actually make sure that you're negating some of these things. And they're coming. You know, we can put our heads in the sand. We can pretend that it's not going to happen. But the truth is, a sovereign default is now more real than it's ever been. The fact that our economy, our GDP is shrinking, the fact that we have got municipalities that are completely insolvent, and we're living in a country that has massive issues. Load shedding, we've gone through all of it. So we can make this a doom and gloom, but the whole important thing here is it's about knowing that you do have options regardless.
Well, that's awesome, Deon. I really appreciate that. Appreciate you coming on. Also, it's a good to chat with you, man, because most of my conversations, I don't get a chance to go in this kind of depth to talk about economics. And you probably sense from this that I have a deep appreciation and interest in economics. So thank you for that. It was really nice to do that. By the way, for those chatting in the chat about, pet food, look, if you're going to eat cat food, my recommendation is Fancy Feast. It's the nicest one out there. It's probably digestible. Don't be eating cat food, folks. Don't be eating cat food. Anyway, but seriously. All right, with that, Deon, I'll go ahead and put you in the waiting room and just hang around. I'll be back with you in a sec. If you put your mic on mute, that'd be great. Folks, Deon Rebello from DCX Bullion, the CEO there. So I'm going to wrap up here. We'll just put him in there. Okay, get this thing to work. And put in waiting room. Okay, there we go. All right, so that's Deon. Thanks a lot, folks, for tuning in. I hope you found this an informative conversation. No, it wasn't an infomercial. It wasn't a paid announcement. It's just apropos topics that folks ought to be knowing about, and it's nice that Deon came on. Yes, I forgot my on-air sign. I forgot to turn on. We had a little bit of technical issue at the beginning, but frankly, it should have been on before that, but I was rushed to finish a video. I made a video about the explosion in Joburg, and I put a piece of music soundtrack to it, which YouTube said is licensed. I can use it. I loaded it up. I made the video. I put it on YouTube, and it came back and said copyright material. I said, okay, fine. Go back. I selected it, and it didn't give me any option to continue to post it. So I had to delete the video, go back to my software, edit out the music soundtrack, which is a shame because it was foreboding music, and then reload the video. So I literally finished just a couple minutes before the top of the hour. So that's my lame excuse for why the on-air light is off. But thank you all for tuning in. And we'll catch you here on the program. We've got Skulk Brits, Springbok number 799 will be a guest on Monday, right at the regular time here, folks. You'll see him on the program. No rugby this weekend, but we'll have a rugby guest on Monday. So please tune in for that. Looking forward to it. And don't forget, I'll be winging my way to Cape Town next week. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a lovely day. I'm not sure if we'll do a Night Owls. Maybe we'll do one today. I'll let you know. I'll put it out in the groups. Cheers, everybody. Thank you very much. And thanks to my guest. It was fantastic chatting with Deon once again. Cheers, everybody. Thank you.